Now our gospel lesson for this morning, it comes to us from the gospel according to Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. I invite you to listen to what God may be saying to you through these words today. A teacher of the law came up and tried to trap Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to receive eternal life?" Jesus answered him, "What do the scriptures say? How do you interpret them?" The man answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself." "You are right," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But the teacher of the law wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus answered, "There was once a man who was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when robbers attacked him, stripped him, and beat him up, leaving him for dead. It so happened that a priest was going down that road, but when he saw the man, he walked on by on the other side. In the same way, a Levite also came there, went over and looked at the man, and then walked on by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was traveling that way came upon the man, and when he saw him, his heart was filled with pity. He went over to him, poured oil and wine on his wounds and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own animal and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper. "Take care of him," he told the innkeeper, "and when I come back this way, I will pay you whatever else you spend on him." And Jesus concluded, "In your opinion, which one of these 3 acted like a neighbor toward the man attacked by the robbers?" The teacher of the law answered, "The one who was kind to him." Jesus replied, "You go then and do likewise." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Who is my neighbor? Really, at first glance, it seems as if the lawyer is asking a fairly simple, straightforward question. Who is my neighbor? But when we take time to slow down and read the text closely, when we take the time to read it as if we're hearing it for the first time and not the umpteenth time, it leads us to speculate. Is that really what the lawyer is asking? Perhaps there's something hidden in his question. What does he mean when he asks Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" For a little background, this morning's passage, it picks up just a few verses after our passage from last week. Jesus had just sent out the 72 to bring the good news in towns all over the place, and they've returned to give Jesus some good news of their own. It's working. And it seems as if Jesus is still there with the 72 when this lawyer appears to try to trick Jesus. However, as usual, Jesus turns it back on the lawyer with questions of his own, causing the lawyer to learn a lesson he was hoping to avoid altogether. You see, the lawyer, he asked that question because he was trying to justify himself. He was hoping that Jesus would give him an easy out. He was hoping that Jesus would tell him that the only neighbors he had to care about were his fellow Jewish men. Because, let's be honest, it's easy for the lawyer to love the neighbors that look like him, that sound like him, that act like him, that think like him. But to love neighbors that may force the lawyer into uncomfortable territory, well, yeah, he wanted an easy way out. He wanted Jesus to tell him, "Yeah, you're doing enough. You're good. Just love your own people." But in true Jesus fashion, Jesus doesn't let the man off that easily, does he? Jesus, the radical teacher that he was, he pushes the man to see beyond the people he considers neighbors, especially the ones he's willing to love, and to love the neighbors that push him out of his comfort zone. You see, Jesus' use of the Samaritan in his story, it was intentional. Jesus tells the lawyer a story about a man who was traveling all by himself on a very dangerous road. What they don't say in the Bible is that this road from Jerusalem to Jericho, it dropped almost 4,000 feet in about 20 miles or so. It was a road full of twists, full of turns, full of switchbacks. It was a road known as one with numerous places to hide, just perfect for people to jump out and rob people or worse. So it was a foolish man who would travel this road from Jerusalem to Jericho all by himself. But that's just what the man did. And we heard what happened. He was robbed, he was beaten, he was left for dead, lying in a ditch on the side of the road. The surprising part of this story is not what happened to the man. It was the actions of the Samaritan. You see, Jewish people disliked the Samaritans, and vice versa. I'm not meaning to rag on our Jewish brothers and sisters. It went both ways. Actually, I think dislike might be too mild of a term. The Jewish people despised the Samaritans. The hostility they felt ran deep on both sides. So to be honest, no one would have blamed the man for turning away a Samaritan who was trying to help and waiting instead for another Jewish person. However, you can't forget that two upstanding Jewish people have already saw the man, and they've already, instead of helping, crossed to the other side. Why they weren't willing to help their neighbor, we can only speculate. But really the reasons, they don't matter so much as the fact that when they had the opportunity to help their neighbor, they chose not to. The Samaritan, on the other hand, a man who had every reason to pass by on the other side of the road when he saw a man who would normally despise him, even ignore him. Well, his heart, the Greek says it literally melted because it was so full of compassion for this man. And it seems without any hesitation, the Samaritan stopped, tended to the man's wounds, transported him to an inn, cared for him, and paid for his eternal care. Not only did the Samaritan help the man, he went above and beyond. This was not one of those thoughts and prayers moments. It was a there's something I can do to help moment, and he took action. The Samaritan, an outsider, he becomes the embodiment of God's love. And I think we can learn something from him. Perhaps instead of asking, who is my neighbor, what we should be asking is, if we are in situations that are a matter of life and death, who would we want to stop and help us? I'm thinking your answer would be anyone. And my friends, we have neighbors. We have people sitting right next to us at this very moment that might be in need of help. When we choose to be like the Samaritan, it means we cannot cross over to the other side of the street and hope that somebody else will step up. No, when one of us needs help, it means when we're asked to pray, we also need to ask God what action we can take. How can God use us to help? I'll give you an example. As most of you already know, my husband Mike passed away unexpectedly about 16 years ago. And when that happened, yes, many people were praying. But that's not what stuck with me. The memories that have always stuck with me were that so many people stepped up. Sure, they started with prayer, but then the fire department started a food train, and my extended family drove in from all across the country to sit with me in the hospital and later at the funeral home. My friends spent the night with me, my first night back at the house that we shared. And it went on. These people, they showed up, much like the Samaritan showed up. But we have to go beyond that. We also must remember that question the lawyer asked: who is my neighbor? Because our neighbors, they go beyond the people who know us and love us. It goes beyond the people who are sitting in our pews or watching online today. While it's necessary, it is not enough to love the people that worship the same God. It is not enough to love only those that have the same political leanings or that show up for the same causes. No, Jesus calls us to take it a step further. My friends, we have to love the neighbors that we don't understand. We have to love the neighbors that live beyond the borders. We have to love the neighbors that society has labeled as outsiders. We have to love the neighbors across the political aisle. And I could go on. Yes, I know it's asking a lot. And it requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of courage. It requires grace. It requires mercy. Most of all, it requires us to come together. Because Jesus does ask a lot of us when we answer the call to love our neighbors. But here, especially in America, we tend to forget that we're not required to do it alone. This is not a solo sport. We are called as a family to one love, to love one another. You know, that man that was beaten and left on the side of the road, he chose to walk a dangerous road by himself. That is not the example we need to follow. Because we're never expected to walk this road alone. We aren't expected to help our neighbors on our own. Jesus, he has already took that path for us. He took his own dangerous path to the cross. He died and he defeated death, and he did it for all of us, not just one individual. So we need to get away from thinking that any part of this journey is solo. So what does it mean for all of us? Well, it means all of us need to band together in one love, in one desire to welcome our neighbors. And what's more, we need to get out there. We can't be like the Samaritan if we're not willing to do God's work outside of the walls of this building. Now, I know you've heard a lot, especially this summer, about us going out to tell others the good news. It's because it was important to Jesus, and it's important for us now. Wouldn't we all love to see these pews full every week? But even if that's going to be a possibility, it has to start with you. It has to start with you and me, with all of us going out and spreading the good news. But we can't stop there. The hard part is what comes next. We can go out and tell people the good news, that's easy. But we have to take the next step and invite people in to join us here. You know, this is something that little kids are really good at. They can bring a new kid into the fold like they were there all along. Adults, I know it's not so easy. But if we want to fill these pews, that's exactly what we need to do. Our neighbors are out there and they don't know we're here. We need to come together so that we can go out to the people in the community, in our state, and beyond. Because they are all our neighbors. They are all worthy of the one love of God. They are all worthy of receiving God's grace and God's mercy. So as we go out into the mission field, first, individually, let us think about who needs to experience God's love. But then let us think together about those places where we can get out there, where we can bring God's love and acceptance to others, where we can represent God to those who don't know God yet. Where can we get involved to make the world a better place? We grow the church when we get outside of this building. This building, as wonderful, as beautiful, as amazing as it is merely a gathering place. Because this building is not the church. We are the church. So let us get together and welcome others into the fold. My friends, let us pray, then let us go out and do the work. God of one love, you call us beyond the safety of our familiar roads to meet the wounded, the weary, and the forgotten. We hear the heartbeat of your mercy urging us to step into the journey of compassion and solidarity. With trembling feet but open hands, we pledge to cross every boundary of race, class, creed, and fear, to stand beside those who suffer, those who are lonely, those who are searching. Lord, may our lives mirror the Samaritan's single-minded care, bending low to tend wounds and carry burdens on our own backs. God, we offer you our silver coins, our time, our talents, our treasures, as symbols of unwavering commitment. Use those gifts to underwrite acts of justice, to sustain ministries of healing, and to break down walls of division in our world. And Lord, as we go out from this place, empower us to live one love every day. Let every word we speak and every deed we do testify that your mercy transcends every divide, and that in loving our neighbor, we become living proof of your gospel.